hadn't stepped foot on the Cross estate in nearly 7 years, but as I turned onto the long, oak-lined driveway, the memories hit like humidity, heavy and suffocating. Savannah hadn't changed much. Still hot. Still beautiful. Still hollow, at least for me. The house stood grander than I remembered, all white columns and manicured lies. Inside, it smelled like polished wood and old tension. Pictures of my father, Gideon Cross, hung in every hallway. Smiling. Stoic. Deceased. The home hadn't grieved him. Neither had they. Delaney, Lorna said as I entered, her voice clipped, almost startled. She didn't hug me. Just a nod, like I was a guest. Sloane emerged from the kitchen, her eyes flickering with something unreadable before vanishing behind a smile. Glad you could make it. I was already regretting it. I kept my expression pleasant, my distance polite. I was here for one reason, to attend the wedding and leave quietly. My room upstairs was still the smallest, still faced the back alley. I unpacked quickly, knowing I wouldn't be there long. This was their house. Their world. I was just passing through. At the rehearsal dinner the next evening, the air was thick with candlelight and champagne. Lorna had arranged every detail. The caterers, the playlist, the guest list. But she hadn't prepared for what came next. Grant Ellison, Sloane's fiancé, raised his glass. To family, he said, smiling. To love. And to the greatest gift someone can give. Disappearing, so the rest of us can finally be happy. Silence. Forks hovered midair. Lorna didn't flinch, she took a long sip of her wine. Sloane looked at her plate. No one said a word. I didn't stand up. Didn't shout. I looked at Grant, saw the smug in his smile. Then at my sister. Nothing. Inside, I burned. But I smiled too. Quiet. Controlled. A slow exhale through the nose. Because rage is loud, but strategy whispers. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I wandered the estate's echoing hallways, drawn to the familiar sound of voices. Near the study, I heard them, Grant and Lorna. Her name's not on it anymore, Grant said. Sloane's the owner. The power of attorney was enough. She'll never touch that cabin again. Lorna replied, make sure it's filed before the wedding. I don't want any loose ends. I stood frozen, heart thumping. My hands shook, but I managed to slide my phone from my pocket, hitting record. Just 30 seconds of conversation, but enough. They hadn't just erased me emotionally. They'd stolen from me. Lied. Sold the one place that ever felt like mine. I left the house before dawn, drove 2 hours out to the cabin. Or what used to be the cabin. It was empty. Locks changed. A for sale sign on the edge of the drive. My father's cabin. My inheritance. Public records listed the owner, Sloane Ellison. In the old mailbox, an envelope waited. No return address. Inside, copies of a deed, fake signatures. A flash drive with a voice memo. Lorna's voice. Use the old college form she signed. It'll pass if no one looks close. She was right. I hadn't looked. I had trusted. And they had counted on that. I sat on the steps where we used to carve pumpkins. Where Dad taught me to fish. Where I thought, maybe once, I belonged. Not anymore. I held the deed in my lap, fingers tracing the forgery. The cabin was gone. The family never came back. And now, they'd taken the only thing I had left. I whispered into the wind, this won't be the legacy I inherit. I write my own. I didn't come to destroy him tonight. I came to make him believe he'd already won. 3 weeks had passed since the wedding. Since the cabin. Since I whispered into the darkness that I'd write my own legacy. New York felt colder than Savannah, but I needed that. Cold clears the fog. I checked into a 1-bedroom rental in Queens under the name Anna Delaware. Small, quiet, forgettable. I didn't speak to anyone in the family. Didn't post a thing. I wanted them to forget me until it was too late. Emmett connected me with Kasha Wolf, a whip-smart attorney who didn't blink when I laid it all out. You're not the first, she said. But you might be the last, if we play this right. Her eyes were sharp. Not pitiful. I liked her immediately. Kasha brought in Malik Tran, an investigative journalist who seemed to live off black coffee and public records. He uncovered Grant's tangled web of shell companies faster than I could say fraud. Startup fronts. Ghost firms. Real estate laundering. The man was a snake wrapped in silk. But snakes make noise when they slither. And we were listening. My nights were sleepless but focused. I listened to the audio of Lorna and Grant again and again. Not because I needed to, but because anger fuels precision. I wasn't broken anymore. I was sharpening. Kasha laid out the plan, a dinner at Grant and Sloane's penthouse. A faux reconciliation. A thank you dinner to make peace. But the peace was the bait. I'm not here to burn bridges, I told her. Just to show who's been setting fires. Malik wired me with a discreet mic. Kasha posed as a consultant helping manage the family's public image. Emmett, my anchor, pulled me aside before I went in. If you poke a snake, you'd better have boots on, he said, his weathered hand squeezing mine. I don't plan to step back, I whispered. I plan to step down on its neck. Inside, the Ellison penthouse was everything I remembered, sleek, overpriced, and soulless. Sloane greeted me with a quick hug that felt rehearsed. Lorna didn't meet my eyes. Grant? Grant was all teeth. Delaney, he beamed, pouring wine. Let's toast to family healing. I clinked my glass. Smiled. Let the poison swirl under my tongue. Kasha played her role perfectly. Over dinner, she dropped casual questions about Grant's real estate holdings. You must have had a clean process transferring everything post-marriage, she said sweetly. Grant grinned, pride peeking through. Everything's been transferred properly. Sloane's the owner, it's done. Click. Malik captured it. But Grant saw it, something in my eyes must have flickered. He tilted his head, sensing the shift. Then Kasha struck. I'm glad you mentioned that, she said, sliding an envelope across the table. This is a formal notice. Delaney is reopening her inheritance claim. Legally. The silence was instant. Grant's smile didn't fade, but it sharpened. Well, he chuckled, I suppose that calls for dessert. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small remote. A speaker crackled. And then, my voice. Twisted. Edited. Angry words spliced together. It sounded like I was threatening him, deranged. Dangerous. Sloane gasped. Lorna's wine glass trembled in her hand. I didn't flinch. I looked at him. Calm. Is that all you have? I asked. Grant leaned in, whispering so only I could hear. It's enough to destroy you. Behind him, Sloane looked pale. Lorna whispered, You need help, Delaney. I stood slowly. Smoothed my dress. Excuse me. Kasia followed me into the hallway, eyes wide. Delaney. He's playing dirtier than I thought, I said, voice steady. Good. I pulled out my phone. Texted Malik, save everything. Now. Kasia exhaled. What now? I smiled. Now? We stopped playing defense. The chandelier above the ballroom shimmered like glass tears waiting to fall. Grant Ellison stood center stage, microphone in hand, his tailored suit catching the light. Tonight, he began, we celebrate legacy, our family's journey, resilience, and vision for the future. I stepped through the rear doors, unnoticed at first. The Savannah heat clung to my skin, but inside, it was ice that slid down my spine. Cameras rolled. Reporters angled for better shots. I kept walking. Malik, already in place beside the AV booth, gave me a silent nod. At his cue, the screen behind Grant flickered. At first, static. Then, his voice. Grant's own voice from a hidden recording, her signatures already on file. We'll finalize it before the wedding. A second clip, Lorna, it's better this way. She never belonged here. The room gasped. Faces turned. Grant stuttered mid-sentence. Sloane froze, wine glass halfway to her lips. Lorna pressed her mouth into a tight, white line. I didn't flinch. I just walked past the cameras and stopped by the edge of the stage. They built a house of cards, I said under my breath. I brought the gust of truth. Would you have done it? Held someone's downfall in your hand and decided to let it fall? Kasia stepped forward, handing Grant a thick envelope of legal documents. You've been formally served, she said, crisp and clear. Everything's on record. Reporters searched. Microphones swung in his direction. Grant barked a denial, grabbing the envelope with shaking hands. This is coercion, he snapped. I have recordings, proof, she's unstable. Kasia didn't blink. Emmett stood behind her, arms crossed, a silent wall of support. I faced Grant squarely. When someone shows you who they are, I said calmly, believe them the first time. Grant's nostrils flared. Sloane approached me quietly, her expression unreadable. I knew, she said after a long pause. Not everything. But I knew something was wrong. I didn't think you'd fight back. I'm not here for forgiveness, I replied. I'm here for the truth. Her eyes welled. But I turned away. The Cross Estate's assets were frozen by the end of the week. Investigations opened. Gideon Cross, who had stayed publicly silent all this time, was now forced into the light. He issued a statement, apologetic, hollow. But it wasn't about him anymore. I stood in front of the old cabin again, restored now, no longer up for sale, no longer erased. The lawn was lined with folding chairs and curious onlookers. Survivors. Believers. Witnesses. Kasha was there. Malik. Emmett. Ramona Steele stood to my right, the faintest smile curving her lips. Women and men who'd been cast out, overlooked, pushed into silence, now given a platform. I kept my speech short. They wanted the greatest gift I could give them to be my absence, I said. Instead, I gave them visibility. And now I give that to others. The applause wasn't loud. But it was solid. Grounded. I looked out into the crowd. If you've ever been told to vanish, what if vanishing meant stepping into your own spotlight? A few heads nodded. Some tears fell. I cut the ribbon. The Restore Truth Foundation officially opened its doors. What they took from me, I used to build something stronger. None of the Ellisons were invited. Not Grant. Not Sloan. Not Lorna. Not even Gideon. They belonged to the past. This was my future. As the sun dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows over the Savannah River, I stood still, breathing it all in. Power didn't have to roar. Sometimes it just stood its ground. My phone vibrated. One new message. No name. Just words. This is just the beginning.